Okay, shalom, everybody. Hope everybody's doing all right. This is Paraza coming at you with the 7 choices that you have in life. Okay, and before we get started, or as we get started, because we already started, right? Let me just explain that everybody has something that they rely on. There are very few entities or people in the universe that are totally independent. They have no dependence on anything else and have no desire to interact with anything else. So there's no such thing as we're just independent. All right, what we can do is we're all interdependent, but we can get as close to the source of what we need as possible. In other words, you can buy water, or you can have land that has water, or you can have access to clean water that you can drink, put in a container, large or small, and use it the way you want to use it and when you want to use it. Okay, so that's the way we have to look at things. We all make up an ecosystem. Okay, and that ecosystem is interdependent, and that ecosystem is made of connected elements. So you are a part of a system, probably part of many different systems. And what you have to look at is, if you remove these elements from the system, how well will that system function? In other words, if you take out a pastor, you take out a boss, you take out a elder, you take out a child, you take out a civil service worker, how well will you be able to function within that ecosystem with that piece removed, and how well will the ecosystem function in general? So there's 7 choices that we have in life. Now, the first 2 are not actually good choices, but it's the choice that most of us make subconsciously and inadvertently. But the other 5 choices are part of a cohesive, holistic ecosystem that allows us to progress and move forward and to be safe together. Now, the first option you have is to fly solo, all right, and face the future alone. Do what you've been doing by yourself, and then research how well that works out for people. All right, so that's not really a realistic option, but it's still a choice that you have. The second one would be to keep getting exploited by businesses, jobs, churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, camps, so-called spiritual leaders or gurus, politicians. You give your money, your time, and your support to people outside of your existence, outside of your being. And we've been doing this for generations, but is there any collective, measurable elevation? Is there any real independence? No. Is there any real sovereignty? No. Is there any real autonomy? No. But we have semi-autonomy, semi-independent, and we have semi-sovereignty. But that system only functions on the exploitation. The exploitation means that there's not a fair exchange of what's going out and what's coming in on both sides of the equation. That's what I mean by exploitation. And when you look at, for example, a religious system, let's just use that example, or a religious system. A religious system functions on a lower level than an employee-employer system. Why do I say that? Because with a religious system, you give your time, you give your money, and you give whatever is required, but then you really get nothing measurable in return. If you really think about it, you don't get anything in return from being a part of different religious structures, organizations, and groups. So my last scenario is probably the best scenario, and it doesn't discount working or jobs. It doesn't discount any religious platform or any Torah-based platform. It works hand in hand with it. It's a very cohesive and a very holistic ecosystem. First one is that you have a choice to consolidate capital and credit with other people, other family, established and built upon a certain criteria and trust elements that you need to have present. So let's understand that first. Families, you consolidate your capital, consolidate your credit, and you build that upon trust and criteria. Now, second to that, in order to do that, you need to have a written agreement. And that written agreement needs to spell out legal protection, expectations, as well as accountabilities for the parties that are involved. Now, mind you, no insincere leader is going to reject having a plan like this. Only the people that just want your money, just want your support, just want your likes and views are going to be opposed to what I'm saying, that they're in leadership. You should have a written agreement with the families that you're involved with of what we expect from you and what you expect from them. And what are the legal protections, the expectations, as well as the accountabilities within our agreement of families. So the families need to unite, and they need to unite and have written agreements on the boundaries and of that relationship. Now, next thing you need to do, the other thing that we need, the choice that we need to make, the third reasonable and rational choice, is to build and to obtain land and businesses. Why? For growth and sustainability in all areas of life. Now, you can't grow a business or grow anything with land unless you have number four. Number four would include data, references, books on as many general, practical, applied, and specific topics as possible. And people that know these different topics, all right, need to be involved with your family consolidation process. Okay. And back to number one real quick. When I say consolidate family capital and credit, I'm not talking about put all you have into into a pot and that's it. That's not what I'm talking about. Everybody can't do that. So don't let that misunderstanding discourage you. You need to say, hey, look, we're all going to do such and such and such and such. I got this. You got that. Let's bring it together. Let's get some formal paperwork and let's move forward and see what happens. That's number one. So we have three elements so far. We have the family, we have written agreement, we have land and businesses, and then the fourth one, we have data, information, education on as many topics as possible to allow us to have a resource library of information and experience to be able to achieve number three, which is land and business expansion and growth. All right. Now, number five, and very important, number five is that we need to learn how to live off grid. You need to learn how to live off grid in terms of transportation, meaning you have an ox, you have a donkey, you have a horse, you have a vehicle that uses alternative power sources like what? Like biodiesel, which brings me to number two of the things we need to learn how to live off grid. Biodiesel, all right, or biogas, all right. So these are all elements. Biogas, for example, can be used like propane to run a vehicle, all right? And biodiesel, as you know, can also be used to run a vehicle on its own. So those are kind of three areas that we need to focus on when I talk about learning how to live off grid. Transportation, energy, and housing. Everything else can go into, number three, which would be like your land and your business, growth and sustainability. All right. So now you need to understand how to work with houses, how to make Roman cement, how to make adobe, how to do rammed earth, how to do earth bag houses, how to do traditional, ancient, now considered to be alternative construction and architectural methods but these are the buildings that have stood the test of time, literally. So though that number five would be learning how to live and function off grid, so that when there is a power collapse, when there is a gap in public services, when there is a gap in the things that we expect society to give us and to provide us in the country we live in, we won't skip a beat. We'll have energy. So when I say energy, I'm talking biodiesel, biogas. I'm also talking wind turbine. I'm talking solar, all of these things that allow us to function while we're disconnected, which means that the bulk of what I'm talking about it's not going to be practical to do these things inside of an urban area, generally speaking, which brings us back to number 3, land and businesses for growth and for sustainability. So those are the 5 choices we have in life, 5 good ones that work together to build a more constructive, healthy ecosystem amongst families that we know and trust and like, if not love, but you should love everybody, but at least we can like them. And then the other 2 choices are choices that, aren't the best choices that at your disposal. The others take a little bit of work. The 5 together take a little bit of work, but it pays off. But those other 2 that I first mentioned, about, just keep getting exploited and just keep flying solo and doing your own thing, that really doesn't work for any collective group of people long term. It's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable model. Okay. But I mean, and this will be the last thing I say. And, let's look at the Mennonites and Amish. How long have they been living off grid per se? Yet they have their basic needs. They have transportation, they have clothes, they have food, they have housing, they have land. They produce their own food. Now, is it the ideal social situation for most people? No. But is it reflective of the point that I'm making? Yes. Families working together, concerned about having land and businesses and information to do things and legal understanding and protection amongst each other, consolidating capital and consolidating credit, and also being able to function off grid. That does work. All right. It's definitely sustainable, but getting exploited by businesses, jobs, just regular people, camps, churches, synagogues, temples, spiritual leaders, politicians, and we give them our support and our money and our time with no measurable outcome, no measurable elevation personally within our own families. Only that particular leadership council, let's call it, elevates and goes higher. We continue to kind of stay where we are, and anything that we do, grow with is not really sustainable because we're just a cog within the wheel. So that's why I say the 5 options I'm giving you are what you need to look out for. Now, there's no Israelite leader that should have any problem doing what I'm saying. But people feel like, well, I'm the one that's doing X, Y, Z, so that's what it is. So let me just finally break it down again, and I'll probably do another video where I just come straight out and just tell you everything we need to do, all right, to have the 5 best choices, which is 1, the families need to consolidate not all, but the beneficial amount of capital and credit together. Number 2, have a written agreement that has legal protections, expectations, as well as accountability. Number 3, land and businesses need to be formulated and acquired for growth and sustainability long term. And then 2, data, information, references on as many subjects and topics as possible need to be acquired and learned, whether it's just general, practical, applied, or specialized subjects. There has to be a constant library of knowledge being pulled together. Number 5, we need to learn how to sustain ourselves off grid. mainly dealing with transportation, energy, and housing. With transportation, you have ox, donkey, horse, solar powered or biogas powered or biodiesel powered vehicles, even electric. All right. And now when you're dealing with energy, we have biogas, biodiesel, solar, you have hydroelectric, and things like that. And then when it deals with housing, you have your options. Now these are all the off-grid aspect, which is a whole category in itself, which is the fifth positive choice that we can make. All right. Now the third subcategory of living off grid would be knowing how to live off grid would be housing, adobe, rammed earth, earth bag, cob, straw bale houses, okay, even stone houses. And then, of course, good old-fashioned wood, okay? So these are things that we need to do together, the best 5 choices that we can make in life to have a better life for ourselves, our children, and however many descendants come after us. These are things that we need to do. We don't have a choice. Our only choice is to keep getting exploited by so-called leadership that a lot of time wants to kind of inject us into a broken model, but stay connected on grid and stay dependent on grid, but that's not really working for us. And again, it's not a sustainable model. It's a high level dependency model that is fragile and is gonna break, especially if you're in the middle of an urban area. It's fragile, it's gonna break, and people are gonna get hurt. All right. Now there is an 8th option, which is just to give up or just, do whatever. Just throw in a towel and just do whatever you're gonna do. So those are the 7 choices we have in life, and those are the 5 best options that work together for a sustainable, long-term, holistic ecosystem with interconnecting elements that allow us to grow together. All right. Now, if you want to be part of that, stay tuned, because we have to do this. We don't have a choice. And if you're following or up under so-called leadership that's not working in these 5 areas, I would really encourage them to do so. And I would encourage them, as well as you yourself, to have a conversation with me to see what we can do to help sharpen each other's swords and work together and grow and sustain ourselves and build a better captivity and exile for us and our children until we return back to our homeland in Northeast Africa, between the Nile River and then going all the way into Asia, into the Tigris, the Euphrates River. All right, so that's all I got for now. Thank you for your time.